Good afternoon, members. I call this special committee for fiscal review of executive expenditures to order. We do have a quorum. Let the record show that Vice Chairman Guerrero is here. Representative Villagomez is here. Representative Castro is here. Representative Probst is here. Representative Sablan's here, and Representative Manglonia is here. Moving along to item 2, old business. We did receive, we did receive a letter from DPS 731. Everyone should have that copy. BMV, sorry. But on letter B, we haven't received any response from DPS. So I'll leave it open. Is there any comment, questions? Recognize Representative Villagomez.
Just a question, Mr. Chairman. Was there any communication to your office requesting for an extension on submitting the requested documents from DPS?
To date, we have not received any. Is that correct? Okay. Any other Representative Sablan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on the BMV records, I wanted to call the members' attention if you have the submission from BMV regarding the vehicle with license plate ADG 282. One fact from the records that did not come up at our last meeting, was the timeline in which the vehicle was actually transferred from Governor Torres to Mr. Diosdado Miravalis. And so I want to note for the record that on the same day that the governor purchased a car battery in the amount of $120 some, so that would have been January 28, 2019. First thing in the morning, it was about 8:30 in the morning. That same day, he transferred that vehicle for which the battery was purchased to Mr. Miravalis. And you can see that in the certificate of ownership in BMV's submission. It's on the very first page, the date that the transfer was effected. Very first page. I don't know how it appears on I don't have the bait stamp version, I'm sorry. Okay. And then further, what's even more perplexing is that later in the records, in March 2019, March 26, 2019, there is a vehicle bill of sale from Mr. Brian Romilor to Mr. Miravalis that appears to have been written out by Ms. Juana Leon Guerrero herself and signed by these two gentlemen. So this would be the vehicle bill of sale. I apologize, I do not have the bait stamp copies.
At the bottom, 0005. These are big. Yeah, it's
okay.
You want this one?
Sure.
Just refer. It is bait stamp.
I'm referring to the non-bait stamp version, but okay. So
you may proceed.
The certificate of ownership is 0006. The bill of sale, 0001. The bill of sale is 0004. And it does appear from the vehicle bill of sale that The director herself filled the vehicle bill of sale out and had these two gentlemen sign. And we would strongly urge Mr. Chairman and colleagues that we call in Director Leon Guerrero to explain what happened with this vehicle. There are really no records that show why Mr. Romilor's name appears in the file. You know, and I would note that the most important thing is the first fact that I started out with, which is that the governor transferred this vehicle to another individual, a private individual, on the same day that he bought the battery and subsequently billed it to taxpayers. And I do want to just note for the members' awareness that Mr. Romilor actually reached out to me privately last week when I guess he had heard somehow that his name was coming up, was appearing in our records, and he seemed extremely concerned and even fearful in some ways and uneasy to the point of, I mean, I would say even paranoia. He just very worried, and he wanted to know what was our interest in this vehicle, but he wouldn't answer any questions either. And so I would suggest, you know, if there is more to this vehicle that this committee might be interested in, we may want to call in Mr. Romilor or ask him for a written statement, and the same with Mr. Miravalis. And perhaps both these gentlemen, as well as Director Leon Guerrero, could shed some light on the story behind this vehicle. But even without their testimonies, colleagues, the certificate of ownership that we have on record and the car battery purchase receipt that we have on record both point to potential criminal conversion of a public asset to a private benefit, as we had discussed before. And I would like to yield now to the minority leader on the subject of DPS's non-response.
Okay, thank you, Rep. Sablan. Let me, before I recognize the minority leader, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So, Rep. Sablan, are you making a motion that we call in those individuals?
Yes, I would like to. We actually have a number of individuals that we would recommend to appear on our list of witnesses, or to appear as witnesses before this body. And yes, Director Leon Guerrero, Mr. Romilor, and Mr. Miravalis are the first three that we would suggest.
Before we recognize your motion, let us, what do you call that? I guess we'll get to the next point of that before we can require the witnesses to be present. Right now we're just establishing some potential wrongdoings by the motor vehicle. We don't know what the involvement is. So before we get into that, we'll finish with the minority leader before we, I guess, before I recognize that motion by Rep. Sablan. Rep. Pros, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, colleagues. Good afternoon. Chairman, and colleagues, referring to old business, item 2, letter B, the letter to Department of Public Safety's Commissioner Robert Guerrero. I'm deeply saddened to see that this letter was sent out on July 28, 2020, and in this 1301 letter requesting for documents to Commissioner Guerrero, we asked for several records to be submitted to our committee, and this was to be received within 5 days of the receipt of this letter, or August 4, 2020. at the latest pursuant to the legal authorities set forth in 1 CMC sections 1301 to 1309. Today is August 10. We have not heard any response from the DPS commissioner, none whatsoever. And I find this deeply concerning when pretty much all the other agencies and departments at least responded, some requesting for extended time to gather their documents. But we got nothing from them. And just for a quick review, we asked for several types of documents under Appendix A, the very last page, which is any and all records of meetings that with the Dear Meat for Dinner, Mr. Robert Arrington and Governor Ralph Torres' trip to the Northern Islands, including meeting agendas, meeting minutes, meeting notes, and our video or audio recordings. And there were several other things that we asked for that included any and all boats, vehicles, equipment, gear, materials, or supplies of the Department of Public utilized for this promotional trip, and several other things, log sheets, manifests, and names and any personnel in the Department of Public Safety. It's a long list because of our time here today. I won't read through everything, but you all have a copy, and you know that there were at least 8 items, none to which the commissioner even responded to. So, Chairman and colleagues, I would like to request that at this point, since this letter was completely ignored, that we move to subpoena these documents. So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Rep. Probst. There is a motion. Before I recognize this motion, Representative Sablan, floor, has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my apologies for being slightly late on today's proceedings. But if I may ask on open discussion on the motion offered by our minority leader, that the letter that you have sent to or solicit to the Commissioner of Department of Public Safety, did they receive those documents, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Okay.
July 28.
July 28.
Yeah, let me just verify.
And prior to this meeting today, did your office make any follow-ups as to why we didn't get any response, maybe even a response by letter?
We have not reached out. I believe everyone that we've sent letters out either contact our office for extension or did submit the documents. So their DPS is the only one that has not replied or sent any message to my office.
So no response and not even a request for an extension was reached out to your office?
That's correct.
Thank you for that clarification. I believe, I'm not too sure if that we should support a subpoena of, I would like that if we can reach out at least one more time with the Commissioner, and if that's not too much to ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Floor Leader.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
State your point of order.
We actually already approved the issuance of the subpoena at our last committee meeting. And what we agreed as a body was that the subpoena would go out immediately upon the failure of the agency to comply with your 1301 letter. And so I would urge that we go ahead and have you issue that subpoena for those records, because the DPS commissioner has failed to comply and has failed to even ask for an extension. We gave him that opportunity, and now we need those records, and we've already approved it. So what I would suggest is that that go out today, we give them by close of business tomorrow to turn in the records that they should have been preparing these past 10 days. And further, Mr. Chairman, we would urge that we call in the commissioner himself as a witness, add him to our witness list, and mandate that none of our witnesses should be allowed to bring in any sidearms to this body when they are called to testify. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Salon. Noted. Any other comments, questions, concerns before we take that vote? Ready? Clerk, go to roll.
Which motion?
The motion is to issue the subpoena to DPS.
Vice Chairman Lorenzo I. De Leon Guerrero.
Good.
Representative Luis John Castro.
Good.
Representative Donald Manglonia.
Yes.
Representative Edwin Probst.
Yes.
Representative Cristina Sablan.
Yes.
Representative J.P. Sablan, John Paul.
Good.
Representative Edmund Villagomez.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, all 8 members present voted yes.
Okay, motion stands. I would require the clerk and the legal counsel to prepare the draft letter so we can be signed today. Thank you. Further. The draft subpoena, sorry.
This is the subpoena deuces taken for the documents. Thank you.
Just clarification, the vote that we made, Mr. Chairman, is to subpoena the individual here, Commissioner, or subpoena the documents. Can I
The
get clarity?
documents,
What,
Not the Commissioner?
no.
what we had discussed earlier, just a point of information, was that we would get to the list of witnesses to call in after we wrap up the rest of the agenda.
So clarified.
Thank you. Okay, moving along, is there any other questions, comments, concerns on old businesses before we move on to the other? Okay. If there are none, under new business, the review of documents listed below, Commonwealth Casino, CCC, Mayor's Office. We did receive documents from the Secretary of Finance. We did receive DLNR. We did receive from Homeland Security, Mariana's Visitors Authority as well, and I believe most of them are for extension. Some were received. I think Finance is the one. I believe there was a concern brought up by a member, and I'll recognize that member now, Rep. Sablan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the subject of the Department of Finance and their submission, the record should reflect that Finance has not fully complied with the subpoena, and we note that the subpoena that you issued requires certification of complete submission, and there is no such statement. Instead, what we have, colleagues, is an affidavit from Ms. Margaret Bertha Torres, the Director of Administrative Services at Finance, that indicates that they actually redacted the original documents. And so what we asked for was the unredacted records, specifically those records showing the credit card numbers that for the cards that had been used throughout the governor's expenditures going all the way back to 2014. And according to the timeline that Ms. Torres provided in her affidavit, after the initial release of records to a citizen who filed an Open Government Act request, those initial records were not redacted and did show the last 4 digits of credit card numbers. Finance actually went back and altered the originals when we, the members of the House of Representatives, requested those same documents. I am honestly shocked, Mr. Chairman and colleagues. I have never heard of such a thing. I am just flabbergasted that original records were redacted only after we made our request, only after Finance became aware that we were doing any kind of inquiry. And I do think that we should call in, add to our list of witnesses, the Secretary himself, as well as Director Torres. Fortunately, we do have at least some unredacted records showing the last 4 numbers of at least 17 different credit cards. These have already been published online by Candid News and others and widely circulated in social media. They've also been entered into our record as House communications. We've gone through the records that have been circulated and submitted for the House record, and I'd like to ask our Sergeant at Arms to just circulate a sampling of these 17 credit cards so you know what it looks like. And when we go back to the records that we have, that Finance redacted, we know what's missing. I could recite the numbers if the members like, or give it to our LB staff to include in the committee report. But colleagues, I think that the most important point is that we should know whose names are on these cards, who paid for all these different items, and if it's not the governor's name on these cards, why is he getting reimbursed for all of the expenses? At this point, we do believe that Finance has violated the subpoena and could be held in contempt. And so, again, Mr. Chairman and colleagues, we urge that we call in the Secretary, call in the staff, and I would further move to issue a subpoena to Finance as well as the governor to disclose the names on each of these cards. And we have a list of 17 credit card numbers, well, the last 4 digits of these credit card numbers, and so we should get the names of the names on those credit cards from Finance and the governor's office. I'd also note, just on Finance's submission, that the records for executive security are not complete. We are aware of other officers who served as the governor's personal security detail. We still do not have those NOPAs. We still do not have those payroll records. And further, I think it would be really helpful for us to have the master reports that Finance has generated for other categories of expenses, have the master reports from the general ledger for travel and for utilities paid out for the governor. I'd like to yield for now on the subject of Finance's submission, if members have any questions or other comments.
Thank you, Rep. Sablan. Any questions, floor leader?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to our colleague here, Rep. Tina, can you guide the members on that pointer that you were mentioning that was redacted but wasn't redacted when you guys got the copies early on?
Sure, sure. Well, actually, the records that we received, that the minority received pursuant to our Open Government Act request, those were redacted. We specifically asked Finance not to redact the last 4 digits of credit card numbers appearing in the documents.
Right.
But what Finance did was they actually redacted the originals. They went to the original documents and blacked them out with Sharpies or whiteout or whatever. And so what they gave us, I mean, they redacted the original, so that's what they have now in their custody.
But you further mentioned that there was an unredacted
Right.
document that when went out in Candid News.
Right,
Is that the same document you're talking about?
right.
That
So-
was redacted?
Yes, yes. Thank you for asking that clarifying question, Mr. Floor Leader. So prior to the Minorities Open Government Act request, there was another request from a concerned citizen under the Open Government Act for a lot of the same records. Our request was actually broader, but the records that were circulated widely on social media and in online news did show the last 4 digits of credit card numbers. And so what we've printed out, we've gone back to those records. We submitted quite a few of them already in our House communications. And so we've gone back, we've printed out, we've logged down the credit card numbers that we have been able to identify. They're not in what we got from Finance. They're not in what Finance has submitted to this body. And now we know that Finance is not even able to provide unredacted records because they actually doctored the original documents.
Thank you for that clarification. That really makes everything clear. Mr. Chairman, I was just going over the submission of documents from Finance, and it is true that some of these documents were redacted. And I posed that question with our legal counsel in our prior meeting, that in the event that documents are redacted, what course of action do we take? And it is as I recall, the response of the legal counsel is that they can redact documents, but they have to justify it. So, Mr. Chairman, the question is to you: did you receive any justification of the redacted documents? Any justification from Finance? Why did they redact the documents?
No, they have not.
Okay, thank you. I yield for now.
Thank you, Mr. Floor. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. And this is in response or same in line with the floor leader's question. If you go through the statement by Margaret Bertha C. Torres, Director of Finance Administrative Services, on item 5, saying that the legal counsel had advised Finance
25.
that the information confidentiality in terms of person, Social Security, must be redacted because it is confidential and protected by law. This is a strong statement from a person that holds a high degree of position at Finance. She made it clear this is the statement that they were advised by their legal counsel, the administration's legal counsel, that all information, confidentiality information must be redacted. So I offer this for every member's attention to consider your question in line with redaction of information. You, Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Rep. Donald.
Thank you, Chairman. And just to add on to that, although the Vice Speaker mentioned that this was a statement made by Ms. Torres, I mean, statement 5, wouldn't that be hearsay? And if so, are we able to include the legal counsel in the list of witnesses to question regarding his statement that he informed Ms. Torres to redact those information? Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Manglonia. Is that a question to the
legal counsel? Yeah.
legal counsel?
Can you just restate the gist of your question?
If it is hearsay, can we add the governor's legal counsel to the list of witnesses?
Yeah, you can subpoena whoever you deem fit for being subpoenaed. If the committee believes that his testimony is relevant to the investigation, you can subpoena whoever you want, including the legal counsel, particularly because he's giving advice to Miss Margaret Bertha C. Torres, not to the governor.
Okay.
That's a different story. If you're asking him about legal advice, he would be giving the governor.
Okay. Thank you. Well, I just wanted to point it out because the Vice Speaker mentioned that this is a sworn statement from Ms. Torres, but then she claimed that she received a call from the governor's legal counsel, so.
There's different levels of hearsay without getting into the legal technical details. What you're seeking is first-hand information, and that's always best.
Thank you, Hayu.
Thank you, Rep. Manglonia. Recognize Representative Sablan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the subject of the Open Government Act, it is true that agencies may redact personal or confidential information pursuant to the Open Government Act. They have to cite the specific exemption that allows them to do that and to justify the redaction of any public records. However, there is nothing in this statement from Ms. Torres that indicates that Mr. Birnbrich advised Finance to actually alter the original records. It's just for any records that they make copies of and release to the public, those records can be redacted to withhold confidential or personal information, provided that the specific exemption in the Open Government Act is cited. That said, when a legislative committee is doing an investigation, we can subpoena personal and confidential records. And we could keep those also personal and keep those also confidential and review them in executive session. That's the role, and that is the authority of the investigative committee. And so what troubles me is that is the fact that Finance redacted the original, so now this committee is not able to even get these original records so that we can properly do an investigation. Thank God for this Open Government Act request, where the earlier request, which resulted in at least some of these records being made publicly available, so that we can count the number of credit cards, we can identify at least the last 4 digits. Those, by the way, are not generally considered confidential. And now we can go back to Finance, go back to the governor and ask what names appear on these credit cards that were used for reimbursements throughout these years of expenditures. And I yield.
Thank you, Representative Sablan. Any further? Okay. The chair would, I guess, request the body to, I guess, before we move forward with any of this, let me go to recess first.
You recess, Chair? So the documents from the minority block with the unredacted of the credit cards, you guys are submitting this for record for the body?
Yes, and we'd like to request that our clerk bait stamp these documents for the committee's
Thank you, so clarified.
safekeeping.
Thank you, Flor. Let's short recess.
I think we could get the list. I mean, I don't know, Counsel, can we get the list of names on credit cards if we have the last 4 digits on the numbers?
From whom?
I mean, the last 4 digits from the governor's office or from Finance?
I think it'll have to be the businesses that.
Or the governor himself?
There's some on these receipts.
Wait a minute. There's a very simple fix to this, very simple. All 17 credit cards, because he turned them in for reimbursement, we have to assume that all 17 credit cards belong to the governor. I'm sorry, but when I get reimbursed, which I don't, but if I were, how am I going to reimburse for somebody else's credit card? Hey, Chairman, give me your credit card. No. We have to assume that he owns all 17 credit cards. Therefore, we simply ask the governor for all 17 of his credit cards. I don't see. So if it doesn't add to the 17, he says, I only have 3 of these, then we have to ask him, can you explain to us who owns these other 14 credit cards? I'm just giving an example. Okay?
Yeah.
But that's probably where we would have to go. Because otherwise, how else are we going to do it? We're going to You know, I mean, we could subpoena him to show us his credit cards, but why even go that route? Just simply say, can you state for the record and show us your credit cards, which ones you own of these 17 credit cards? And if you own all of them, then we know he owns all 17. And if he doesn't, then can you tell us whose credit cards these belong to? Certainly he should know that, right?
Chair. Rep. Props, you're mentioning 17 credit cards. I think because you received 17 documents with credit cards that had the last four redacted, right? But again,
Unredacted.
Unredacted.
Yeah.
But again, the name is redacted on the card.
Not all the receipts show the names.
Okay.
So it's just the last
So
four digits that
we
appear.
are assuming that there are 7 credit cards out there,
17,
17.
yes.
No, there are.
There are.
We've gone through these, these records have already been submitted as House communications, right? They've been published. They're a lot of the same records that we got, except our records that we got were redacted. So we went back and we counted 17 different credit cards. Some credit cards are used multiple times. Some credit cards appear only once or twice, but we counted them. We know that they're different because the numbers are different. Some are Visa, some are American Express, some are MasterCard.
On another note, the credit cards that was requested by a certain citizen and they received information that were not redacted, correct?
Yes,
You
that's
did
correct.
state that,
Those are
right?
only the last four numbers, though.
Just the last four numbers, not the entire. That's how they appear on most receipts, right? So
Actually, that's U.S.
That's-
state legislation. I mean, that when it's truncated. When you get your bill or whatever, or the copy of it, it'll have the last four numbers. Because just about every state, I think that is state legislation, that states that you can only put down the last 4 or 5 numbers. That is legal to do so. There's nothing illegal about doing that. Every business is allowed to do that.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I understand your point on what you're getting at. There is, in my opinion, there's no. We're not violating any. I believe privacy.
No.
There's no names. There's just the last digits. So, are you saying that finance actually redact everything? They altered the originals.
I'm not saying that. Finance said that. If we look at Miss, are we back on record, Mr. Chairman?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, if you look at Ms. Torres's statement, she said that she instructed finance employees to redact all personal information from all responsive documents. And then at the very end, she says, the redaction of personal and confidential information was made on the original documents kept by finance. Therefore, finance is in possession of original documents with all personal and confidential information redacted.
That includes the last 4 numbers.
So they went back and redacted everything after we asked for those records.
But in the Department of Finance, I guess what I'm trying to get at is we actually go and look at one of the documents if it's actually swiped off.
No, what we're suggesting is that we go to the governor and ask him to provide his list of credit card numbers, and we can verify that these are all of his cards. And if they are not all of his cards, then we should know whose they are. He should be able to tell us because he submitted them for reimbursement. Sure. I mean, we can call in Ms. Torres. I mean, she says here that the original records are all redacted now. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, we go to the governor.
Right.
Yeah, so, Chair, even if they unredact the credit card for the last 4 digit, we're still not, this body's still not gonna be able to find out whose credit card it is, right?
Right.
We got to
You have to have
further
a-
down, further investigate it, because any receipts from credit card, yes, that's normal that the last 4 digits, but the name of the cardholder is never in the receipt.
Well, sometimes. There are a few of the receipts, and the samples that I circulated show the governor's name on some of them, but not all of them. So, you know, you're right. Your point is well taken, that finance won't be able to tell us whose names are on these cards. The problem was that they redacted the last 4 digits so that if we didn't have the original documents that were released, we would never be able to know how many cards were used in the first place.
Okay, so I guess the goal of looking for the unredacted version is just to count the different numbers of the credit cards to determine that there's probably 17 different.
Yes.
Okay, if that's the case, then I agree.
Thank you.
Can I just say, I mean, we're just talking amongst ourselves, that it is highly unusual for anybody to hold 17 credit cards. And I speak from experience. I used to, when I was in college, had a lot of credit cards, but 17, that's a lot. And that's why we just want to verify, are all these 17 credit cards belonging to the governor? If not, then who are the owners?
So what we would suggest, Mr. Chairman, is that we call in the Finance Secretary and Director Torres as witnesses, and that we also issue a subpoena to the governor to ask him to validate all 17 credit card numbers that we've been able to identify in these records. We can issue a subpoena duces tecum, if you would like, Mr. Chairman, to ask that he submit documentation verifying that all 17 credit cards are his.
It's suspicious, why would they
Yeah,
record the last digit?
It is.
that is very suspicious.
After we ask for it, yes, it is.
And they know it's under investigation. That's
Yeah.
what's so suspicious.
So when we go back, or recognize you,
To make that motion.
you state what you stated, summoning the parties involved. And then when we move on to the next business, we're just gonna end at that. We can't, unless you have something else to produce to the body.
Could I just ask our legal counsel, like how we would craft the subpoena duces tecum to the governor, if we just want to verify the names on these credit card numbers that he used? Would it be a subpoena duces tecum, or would it be something else?
Statement when he says third reimbursement, it's his, right? It's,
Right.
That all 17
yeah, it's
belong
his.
to him.
Right.
But what you're saying is when you slash that it's not his, otherwise they would not have done it, because it could say, well, those are all my credit cards.
And if they are not, who do they belong to?
Yeah.
He has to identify.
I don't wanna go that route of, subpoenaing the governor. Obviously, they're obstructing something. That's not.
You want to start with calling in the witnesses?
Okay. I'm
Okay.
comfortable with that.
We can do that.
Because we can't move forward with any of this
Without verifying. Okay.
without verifying. It's
Let's do
pointless
that.
to say governor, blah, blah, blah. Get the witnesses in, and get them on record.
Yeah, I think we should exhaust all our efforts with all these witnesses, and then if we're still in a dead vote, then
Yeah.
that would be the
And
last.
Okay, I'm comfortable with that.
To exhaust
can
all
we,
our
compromise and
Yeah.
get this person, we'll issue the summon today,
Okay.
and we set up a day this week to have those three,
Who are the three? Oh, the legal counsel as well?
the council,
Okay.
the Miss Bertha, and,
Secretary. Okay, I'm good with that.
and, whoever, I guess, whoever signs the reimbursement.
And okay, the people who signed the reimbursements. Okay, but the floor leader's point though, that they, like, even, so what we're getting at is that, is also like whose names are on these credit cards. None of those witnesses from finance would be able to say
To answer
whose
that.
names are on those credit cards. Only the governor can answer that, right? So like what we would be getting at with these witnesses would be,
Why?
why did you redact them? Why did you doctor up the original documents, right?
Which is unprecedented, I would believe.
Yeah.
I don't think this has ever happened.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's do it. I do. Well,
We
under
have-
miscellaneous.
We have other
Yeah, well,
other comments on the other.
yeah, we have other, like,
Yeah.
OGA records.
So any OGA will OGA, but I'm saying that we cannot move forward if you're still presenting stuff from finance. We can't move forward unless we have finance here.
Okay,
Questions.
so let's
Okay.
close that.
Okay.
We're good? Okay. Let's do it.
Okay, thank you, members, and I apologize for the long break. We are back. We are under new item under Secretary of Finance, and the chair recognizes Representative Sablan.
Yes, at this time, Mr. Chairman, I would move to add to our list of witnesses to summon, ideally this week, the Secretary of Finance, the Director of Administrative Services for Finance, as well as any other individuals who signed off and certified the governor's reimbursements, to explain why and how original records that we have requested from the House were redacted, so that this investigative committee was not able to get the records that we needed to continue with our investigation. So I so move, Mr.
Second.
Chairman.
Second. Second.
Okay, second. You may proceed. Is there any
And
other?
having said that, though, I would also like to just state for the record that, you know, as we discussed during the recess, we should assume that the governor's name appears on all of these credit cards. Our first interest is in getting some kind of explanation from finance as to why they redacted the originals. But to get to the question of whose names are all on these credit cards, and to verify that these are all of the governor's credit cards, we really can only get that from the governor himself. And so we can save that subpoena or that summons for later down the road. For now, the motion is to call in these witnesses from finance, as well as the legal counsel that advised the director to redact the documents prior to release.
Thank you, Representative Sablan. Any further on that? Okay. I guess clerk, call the roll. And the motion is to summon Secretary of Finance, Ms. Bertha Torres, Mr. Birnbrich, and the Jane and John Doe. Is that what you call the individuals certifying those documents to be present to this committee?
We need
Okay, well, just the three then, or the four. Okay, so are we clear of that? The four members, Secretary of Finance, Ms. Torres, and Mr. Birnbrich. Three. Okay, clerk.
I'm good.
Vice Chairman Lorenzo I. De Leon Guerrero. Representative Louis John Castro.
We're good.
Representative Donald Manglonia.
Yes.
Representative Edwin Probst.
Yes.
Representative Christina Sablan.
Yes.
Representative John Paul Sablan.
Again.
Representative Edmund Villagomez.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, all 8 members present voted yes.
Thank you, clerk. So motion is adopted. Council, please prepare the summon. and we'll schedule that meeting this week.
Decide the date now.
Okay. Any further on under new business?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Flor.
my apologies because I'm looking at the listing of the legal counsel and the individuals to be subpoenaed. So the MVA wanna, Mr. Romuler, did you guys took a vote on that before we came?
We're not there yet.
No.
Oh, we're not there yet. I'm sorry, because I'm just looking at the list of witnesses that the legal counsel is writing down there on his computer. Thank you, so clarified.
Thank you, Flor.
Chair, so can we decide on the date for those to come in?
Before we decide on the date,
Reason being is that we need to be prepared, and based on our schedules, we do have other schedules.
yes. Before we decide on the date, I believe we have a session this Thursday.
Correct.
So Friday. Friday.
Then,
Friday morning, 10 a.m. In the afternoons, okay?
morning.
Thursday morning, since our session is in the afternoon.
Is Thursday morning enough time to prepare? Okay. The motion is that a motion?
Yes, I move to summon these 3 individuals to this chamber on Thursday, August 13th, in the morning.
Is there any second?
Second.
Second, okay. So under discussion?
Just want to point out to the members that the customary time's 5 days. I would like an explicit decision that you're going to the 3 days rather than the customary 5 days, just so it's clear on the record that I didn't advise you that the customary time is 5 days. I want to make sure that we're voting on the 3 days specifically. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that the question that we really want them to explain on the record is why they redacted these records after we requested them.
But counsel, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I know that the normal process is 5 days, but nothing stops this body to invite witnesses within 3 days. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Legal counsel?
As long as we vote on it.
Do you need us to vote to call them in within 3 days? I mean,
I would prefer yes, just to be
Can you
specific.
go on the record, please?
Because the language says the subpoena shall be issued with 5 days' notice unless the committee says otherwise. And I want you to say otherwise by saying it's 3 days, we're aware of the 5-day customary period. We are aware that 3 days is what we're asking for. That's all, just a simple clarification.
Well, we could justify that we just wanted to know why. They
That's fine.
redacted. It's not like we're gonna have a bunch of really
Right.
questions for.
Yeah, it's gonna be a short.
It's gonna
you
be
don't-
a
we don't have
short.
to do
We
a
just
roll
wanted
call.
to explain.
Yeah, I think all of you can just say so advised that the legal period is any time the committee wants.
let's just do a voice vote.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, so please restate your motion.
I move to call in the Secretary of Finance, Ms. Margaret Torres, the Director of Administrative Services, and Mr. Gil Birnbrich, Governor's Legal Counsel, on Thursday morning, 10 a.m. I so move.
Second. Any question? Discussion. Ready? All those in favor say
Aye.
All those not in favor say nay. Motion carries. Okay, moving along. Under miscellaneous. Okay, let's go back to under new business, and I'll recognize Representative Probst.
Thank you, Chairman. I submitted for copies today to turn in additional OGA documents. Did everybody get a copy with regard to reimbursements? It should have been bait stamped A00031. Did members?
Yeah.
Want to make sure that it's for reimbursements for $2,332.63. There were 15 copies that.
Let's recess real quick.
Okay.
See if everyone has copies. Oh, okay. Sarge has it.
Okay.
Sarge, could
Yeah.
you please pass? Can I get one? You may continue, Rep. Pro.
Is the first one Hyatt?
Okay, Rep. Probst, you may proceed. What?
Actually, and before we,
Who numbers these?
Council, sorry, I'm having you guys do two different things at the same time. I apologize. I'll give you dual compensation. That wasn't funny.
I got it.
So, Council, I wanted to, yeah, I know, but before we get to that, I wanted to ask if you could pull up Title 70 under Department of Finance, just to remind Chairman, colleagues, and the viewers about the rules, official representation expenses under Title 70, under Department of Finance, Part 100.
Title 70?
Do you want to take a short recess? It looks like we have technical difficulties here. Short recess,
Do you
Chairman?
have a copy? You
I-
can read out the copy if you want.
Okay.
While the
Okay, but colleagues, can we just go ahead and start going over this?
you may
Okay,
proceed, Mr.
thank you,
Probst.
Chairman and colleagues. Okay, first thing I wanted to call in, as a reminder, as we discussed in our previous special committee meeting about Title 70, Department of Finance, Part 100 under official representation expenses requires certain documentation and for official representation expenses. And the main things, at a bare minimum, this is Part 100, if you scroll down to Part 100, must include, at a bare minimum, the name and position of persons entertained, that's one. Number two, nature and purpose of the expense and its direct relationship to CNMI government business. And number three, description of matters discussed. Number four, original receipts and supporting documents. Chairman and colleagues, if we could just go through this, which I'm submitting for the record, which is in bait stamped, beginning at A00031. This is another of a long line of reimbursements submitted by the governor. And some of them are concerning. I will explain it, but let's just go through these, if we may. The first page, of course, is submitted for reimbursement on April 9 to the Secretary of Finance, title subject reimbursement for several different items listed here from February 7 through March 28 of 2019 for various reimbursements under official representation expenses. Justification on that, the total is $2,332.63, and then it has justification. If you turn the pages to A00033, one of the first very concerning documents that we saw was a meeting with black micro reps. Once again, this fails to meet the bare minimum requirements for official representation expenses, violating Title 70. But what I do want you to take notice is that this is a meeting with black micro representatives. No indication what the meeting is for, but we do know that they are contractors, black micro. So it is very strange and peculiar that the governor would be hosting black micro representatives, and it's for an amount for 4 guests, as that includes the governor, for A0033. For a meal at Fiesta at Teppanyaki, items that include tenderloin seafood, sautéed foie gras, Wagyu beef, Wagyu sirloin, Sauvignon Blanc, and several other things. The total for this bill was $282 in cash. Again, concern here is this is a meeting with black micro reps. What benefit did the public gain from this? Again, no documentation of the bare minimum threshold. And then if you turn the pages, you'll see other similar concerns that there's no documentation. On A00034, on the very next page, if you flip it over, there is a hosting of a CNMI rugby team with only 4 people. I believe there's more than 4 people on a rugby team. That's pretty minor. But again, no description for what it is. And then on that same page, there is a reimbursement for Marriott Marquis, Washington, D.C., and it's for a total of $209.92. But there's no indication as to not even who he met with. There's no name on this. No name, no record, no nothing. And this is for $209.92, no information whatsoever. The only thing that we do know is that it was on February 19, 2020, with 6 guests. No indication, yet it was still reimbursed. And then you turn the page to A00035, meeting with Ed Moon. Ed Moon. I would like to ask my colleague, Representative Edmund Villagomez, Representative, is this you? Did you, for the record, dine with the governor on March 7, 2019?
No.
Oh, okay, so this is another Ed Moon. Again, Chairman, colleagues, we don't know who Ed Moon is, but certainly he must be an important person because this was at Kevin's Prime Rib and Seafood, and the total amount that was paid for was $442. That included some really good food. It's so good that it wasn't even listed. It just says chef's table, so it must be pretty extraordinary. But again, $442 that taxpayers paid. No indication who Edmund is, what was discussed, or anything. So once again, it fails to meet the requirement, Title 70. And then that's for 6 people for $442. So it was a pretty good meal. Some Corona beers too. Somebody ate great food and had the Diet Coke. That usually doesn't work. But anyway. And then on the very same page, what was concerning was a lunch at Kinpachi Restaurant. The governor said he had lunch at Kinpachi Restaurant, meeting with Jack Manglonia, Senate President, then Aaron Camacho, and John Camacho. And it seemed very strange that, well, such a meeting would take place because we were curious to know what meeting would need to take place with these individuals involved. So we reached out to Miss Erin Camacho. I actually emailed her, and she sent a letter of testimony, a statement for A00041. if you pull out her response to me, it says, "Hello, Representative Probst. Yes, I would like to explain what happened. On March 7, 2019, I took my father, Juan A. Camacho, to lunch at Kimpachi Restaurant in Garapan for his birthday. Upon entering the restaurant, we saw the governor and his table, so we said hello. We then proceeded to have lunch at a separate table. When it came time to pay, I found out that the governor paid for our bill. Their table left before we were done, so I assumed he paid for it with personal funds. I was extremely disappointed that I was named in the newspaper for this memo, as it was untrue." So, according to Miss Erin Camacho and her father, they were there for a birthday, but they were mentioned in this meeting, but they were not even part of the meeting, yet their meal was reimbursed, and it was actually his birthday. So again, that's concerning, because how does this even meet official representation expense? It certainly doesn't. Most importantly, they weren't even at the table. They were at a completely separate table. We do have her statement submitted into record. So that is obviously, somebody's not telling the truth here. And Ms. Erin Camacho has, for the record, submitted that. And I do not understand why she would say something that would not be true. So anyway, that's something that, again, is a discrepancy. And then, if we turn to page 36, just more receipts that no indication as to what's going on. You know, who exactly is in attendance. And then if you move to 00037, Hard Rock Cafe, meeting with the Shell representative. It's a small amount, only $28.76. But again, no indication as to what this meeting is for. Then on the same page, Costa Restaurant, he has a dinner, or I'm sorry, lunch, that is $264 plus a $30 tip for a total of $294. Meeting with Taiwan Adventist Hospital rep. We don't know anything about this because, again, nothing is included. Again, violation of Title 70. Now you flip the page. We're almost done. Don't worry. I'm sorry to bore you. On the next page, A00038, this is really interesting, that on, what date is this? On March 11, 2019, at 11:59 a.m., the governor had a meeting. At the bottom it says, meeting with OMB regarding budget issues. So he went to Namde Moon Restaurant, and the total was $196. As far as I know, the OMB is in the same building. We taxpayers spent $196 so that he could meet with OMB regarding budget issues when his office is upstairs. Hers, I believe, is downstairs. And she just traveled up the elevator or walked up the stairs, that would have saved $196 of taxpayer dollars. I've had lunch with several people to discuss issues. I don't know if I've ever had a $196 lunch at Namde Moon. This is just, once again, not just excess spending, but a violation of Title 70. Nothing whatsoever is explained as to what was accomplished, what was discussed, how this benefits the taxpayers. On the very same page, you have a Costa Restaurant meeting. All it says here is meeting with senators. $211.20 total. Total with tip, $240. Meeting with senators at Costa Restaurant, paid for, again, by taxpayers. These are the types of receipts that we have been looking at and getting, and there are, yeah, we're already going over time. But I wanted to submit it for the record, mostly to show that some are saying, what's the big deal? He's a governor, he can spend whatever he wants. But colleagues, I want to remind you that even you, if you have expenses that you would like to submit, you have to justify it and follow specifically Title 70. But you also have to file through the official representation and justification documentation forms for you to get reimbursed. Again, these are just some of the many documents that we have reviewed, and we have a lot more to be submitted. And of course, we did submit these for the record, including Ms. Erin Camacho's statement that said that she did not, she was not at the meeting with her father. She was not part of that meeting, yet it was still paid for and reimbursed, and the governor was reimbursed for basically wishing them a happy birthday. I don't think any of us have that type of power. Thank you, Chairman and colleagues.
Thank you, Representative Probst. Any questions, concerns, comments with regards to Representative Probst's submittal of documents? Okay, moving along. Any further under new business? Okay, Representative Savalan.
Thank you. On the Casino Commission's request for an extension, I noted that they asked for an extension to August 18 to submit the records that we requested with respect to the Community Benefit Fund. And I did reach out to both the interim director at the time as well as the CCC's legal counsel to ask if they could at least submit the records that they have collected so far at the halfway point. They seem very amenable to that. We don't have to wait until the 18th to get everything. We could at least begin to get some records, and I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, that you work it out with them so that they can give us what they have by Wednesday, August 12th, and we can get the remainder of the records by the 18th. Just so that we can move things along a little more quickly in our review and begin to look at what they have by Wednesday. And on the Northern Islands Mayor's Office request for an extension, he asked for until today. Have we received anything?
Not that I know of since this morning when I got in. There was none.
Okay. Well, he still has a couple of hours, I guess, before the end of the day. So perhaps we'll get those tomorrow, hopefully. Okay. Thank you. I yield.
Noted. We'll have my office follow up with regards to CCC and what current documents they have so far. Any further under new business? Okay. Under miscellaneous? Representative Mangalonia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the proposed rule change or amendment to the rule, can we act on that today?
Can you state well, I know what you're proposing. I just want to state it for the record. I believe the council is still working on it.
About the presence of the committee.
I have something that council had me review. Should I just state that on the record?
Sure.
It's a proposed rule for special committee on fiscal review of Executive Expenditures, Section 101. Notwithstanding any rule of the House of Representatives, a member of the special committee may appear, participate, vote, and be considered present for all purposes, including but not limited to establishing quorum in a hearing or committee meeting electronically via telephone, video, or electronic means, provided that the member is physically present in the Commonwealth. This provision shall be effective until such time that the flight schedules between the member's location and the respective committee venue resumes to daily operation and the declaration of the state of a significant emergency or a state of public health emergency has been lifted by the governor.
Thank you, Representative Mangalonia. Is there any objection to his request? No objection. Can we get a second on that before we vote on it?
Second.
Okay, there is a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor, say nay. Okay, motion carries. So the rules is adopted. Any further under miscellaneous? Representative Villagomez?
Mr. Chairman, regarding the Northern Island Mayor, so He has until the end of today.
Yes.
So we vote on whether to do a subpoena on our next meeting, or does that kick in automatically?
We would prepare and vote on it on the next meeting.
Point of order. We actually already approved the issuance of the subpoena immediately upon, like, the failure of the department or office to comply with the letter.
Okay. Okay, since it's here in the current agenda, let me ask the members if there's any objection to issuing the subpoena today if the mayor of the Northern Islands fails to submit. Is there any objection?
No
object-
objection.
Okay.
I mean, we could give him till close of business today.
Yes.
And then issue the subpoena first thing tomorrow
Tomorrow,
if
okay.
he does not.
Is there an objection, members?
No objection.
Thank you. Moving along, any other under miscellaneous? My office did receive, for the record, from Representative Sablan with regards to issuing a letter of request to IPI and Triple B. It's a 1301 letter continuation. Does each member have that request? No?
No.
Do you have a copy of that request? Okay, I'll get that member. We were asking some additional documents from private entities. So I would issue that out today. I just want to make sure that there's any objection from the members. And there are none? Okay. Further along under miscellaneous, I believe the speaker's here to request the additional or submit additional names. Is that correct? Do we have a copy of that so that we can? Did you email me? There is additional member, alternate members, non-voting members, Representative Ivan Blanco and Representative Lipon, and that's for your information. Any further? Representative Sablan?
Yeah, a couple of things, Mr. Chairman and colleagues. We had, at the beginning of this meeting, discussed our list of witnesses to begin calling in for testimonies before this body, and we've so far only agreed on calling in the finance witnesses and the governor's legal counsel. But would this be the appropriate time now to go through the list of additional witnesses to begin scheduling?
Maybe it's something you would submit to the office so that I can compile it and we can discuss.
But for the record,
Okay.
it's not, it's by agency, and it's also based on the records that we've received so far. So for BMD, we would urge to subpoena Director Leon Guerrero, Mr. Romalor, as well as Mr. Brian Romalor and Mr. Diosdado Miravalis as witnesses. Of course, for the Department of Public Safety, the Commissioner himself. For Finance, as we have said, Secretary of Finance, Ms. Margaret Bertha Torres, as well as Mr. Gil Birnbrich. For MVA, we would urge for the subpoena of the Managing Director, Ms. Priscilla Iacopo, and Board Chair Marianne Aldam Pierce as witnesses. And just for the members' awareness, I mean, we saw it in the records that were submitted. Ms. Iacopo's name appears on multiple permits. There's the main blanket permit that the Secretary issued, as well as the special permits that authorized her, as well as the governor, to bring back coconut crabs from the Northern Islands to Saipan, not in season, including coconut crabs from an island that is constitutionally protected in a no-take sanctuary. as well as her name is listed on the permit that allowed the governor to introduce sandbar deer on Pagan, which is also a violation of the law. And it seemed from the budget hearing for those who were in attendance that Ms. Iacopo was not even aware of the plans to introduce sandbar deer. There's also no indication in the records that we got from MVA that they knew that their own funds were being used for the trip. We have a letter from the chairwoman, Marianne Aldon Pierce, actually specifically asking the governor for assistance in transferring funds to MVA because they were facing a massive shortfall, as we all know, as all agencies were. And it is my understanding that MVA was not even aware until we had the budget hearing for MVA with the Secretary of Finance here, that their own hotel occupancy taxes were being used to pay for this trip. And so we would urge that we call in these two individuals from MVA to testify as witnesses. And then from Homeland Security, we do have reason to believe that there were other equipment and supplies utilized in the governor's trip to the Northern Islands that the Special Assistant Gerald De Leon Guerrero did not disclose on his response to this committee. So we would move to subpoena both the Special Assistant as well as Mr. Roland Cruz, who is listed as Homeland Security personnel who participated in the logistical arrangements for this trip. And from DLNR, the individuals who are mentioned in the records submitted who participated in the Northern Islands trip include the Secretary himself, Mr. Lawrence Concepcion, and Mr. Francisco Roberto. And so we would suggest that we add them to the list of witnesses as well. And that, I think, wraps up the list of witnesses to call in for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Sablan. Any further? Ready? Okay, so before we adjourn, a meeting will be on this Thursday, 10 a.m., and we'll get the summon prepared today.
Point of order. I think that because of the shortened time frame, we should just recess until Thursday. If that
It's within the 72.
because we're calling for this meeting within the 72-hour period. Is that fine? Legal counsel?
Yeah,
Okay. So we should recess until Thursday, not adjourn.
Thank you, Representative Sablan. And with that, this committee will stand in recess to Thursday, 10 a.m. Thank you.